Hello everyone, welcome to CEC Gurukul lecture series on Introduction to Indian Philosophy. In this lecture, I will explain the Madhyamika school of Buddhism, which is an offshoot of the Mahayana sect. It is difficult to ascertain when the Mahayana sect of Buddhism arose, but the characteristic of the Mahayana sect is that here we witness peculiar insights into the teachings of Buddha. The Mahayana literature is quite different from the earlier Buddhist sutras. It is believed by some that the Mahayana sutras were delivered by Buddha himself, who still exists in some form. But this is a matter of research. I can't really comment on it. So let us discuss the two schools that we study in the Mahayana tradition, which are Madhyamika and Yogacara, and in this lecture I will concentrate on the Madhyamika school. Madhyamika are known for their doctrine of emptiness. What it is about and what it leads to will be the subject matter of this lecture. You see, Buddha was exceptionally talented, and he knew very well what pedagogical methods could be adopted to teach his disciples as well as the common people. Being perceptive of the needs and capacities of his followers, he either restricted himself from telling the deepest truths or was selective in using his words or remained silent on certain matters. Madhyamika system is an offshoot of this silence, as the principal work of this school begins with the silence of Buddha on metaphysical questions. Now, Nagarjuna is the founder of the Madhyamika school. He lived in the early 2nd century CE, and his work Mool Madhyamaka Karika, which is also called Madhyamika Shastra, is a systematic representation of the philosophy of this school, and this work has 27 chapters. Other prominent works of Nagarjuna are Vigraha Vyavartini, Shunyata Saptati, Ratnavali and Chatustava. Nagarjuna taught the unique doctrine of Shunyata, which refers to freedom from all essentialist thought constructions. For him, dharmas which were accepted in the Theravada tradition as the ultimate reals, having an enduring nature of their own, were not just impermanent but also devoid of any intrinsic nature. And Nagarjuna says that lack of any intrinsic nature is what is termed as Shunyata or Nisvabhavata. And for this reason, probably the school has been widely misunderstood. For many have labeled it as nihilism or some sort of monism or absolutism. But this is not true. It is sheer injustice to this fantastic and powerful school of Buddhism. In fact, it sticks to the teachings of Buddha so much that its name itself is an example of it. For the term Madhyamika comes from the Buddha's teaching of Madhyama Pratipat or the middle path. And thus the school advocates avoiding all extremes of thought, and thus avoids all isms or vada. All phenomena like house, garden, table, chariot, tree lie midway between existence and non-existence. So according to Nagarjuna, there is neither reality of the world nor the non-reality of it. There is only relativity. Only Shunyata is the truth, and Pratitya Samutpad is another name for Nisvabhavata, which is just another name for Shunyata. So, Madhyamika school is also known by the name Shunyavad. But the word Vad here must not encourage anyone to view Shunyavad as a theory or thesis itself. It must also be clear that the word Shunya does not mean void. It only means essencelessness. It is a methodology. It is a model of philosophical activity leading to the critical insight into the nature and function of concepts, which in turn gives us nirvana or freedom from all sorts of thought constructions or kalpana. The other exponents of this school are Aryadev, who it is believed was a contemporary of Nagarjuna and assisted him in articulating the principles of the school. Then in the 5th century CE, Madhyamika school was divided into two sub-schools, namely Prasangika Madhyamika led by Buddha Palita and Swatantrika Madhyamika led by Bhavivivek. The difference in the two schools is with regard to the methodology used in refuting the theories of the opponents. So, the Swatantrika Madhyamika school works on putting forward arguments and examples for proving their point. The Prasangika Madhyamika school, on the other hand, adopts the reductio ad absurdum method to demolish the position of the opponent without using any independent or swatantra argument. You would know that reductio ad absurdum method is a logical tool which reveals ultimate inconsistencies in the opponent's thesis. Then in the 7th century CE, Chandrakirti maintained the tradition of the Prasangika Madhyamika school. The single objective of the Prasangika Madhyamika school is to reduce the adversary's position or thesis into absurdity without putting forward a view of its own. And this is quite in tune with the Madhyamika thought, which does not have any theory to put forward except that it avoids extreme views and any essentialist thought construction. These in fact are the three stages of development of the Madhyamika school. Now let us come to Mool Madhyamika Karika. In this work, Nagarjuna scrutinizes the concepts of causality, substance and nirvana, and logically establishes that these concepts, when taken in the metaphysical sense, lead to inconsistencies and absurdities. The method used by Nagarjuna is called Prasangika, or the four-cornered logic. Chandrakirti, who, as I just mentioned, belongs to the tradition of the Prasangika Madhyamika, has written a commentary on Mool Madhyamika Karika in Sanskrit language, and it is called Prasannapada. Let us begin with Shunyata. What exactly is meant when Nagarjuna talks about it? Shunyata does not mean negating, because logically negation means affirmation of something real, existing in some form and in some place other than where it is absent. You know what this means? Let us understand. Generally, when a person says A is not B, what does he mean? In all probability, he means A is C, meaning it is real in some other form. And this is precisely what the Shunyavadins are rejecting. Shunyata is a description of things devoid of any swabhav or independent nature. So there is nothing real. Nothing has a self-nature or swabhav. According to Nagarjuna, this realization of Shunyata is a sure shot remedy for suffering, because The reason for our suffering is ignorance, due to which we cling to the objects of this world. We regard the impermanent as permanent, the relative as the absolute, the conditioned as the unconditioned. In our ignorance, we see things in imposed forms, meaning that we posit substantiality or absoluteness to them. And when this happens, we get stuck to the web of errors. We begin to believe in an eternal self and pursue the worldly objects with the same belief that they can also stay with us forever. Shunyata makes us realize the false sense of I or self or thingness or svabhava. But we may again make an error in making Shunyata itself as something absolute. So, this error of misplaced absoluteness, which is the root of all ignorance and suffering, takes two general forms: the error with regard to the mundane truth and with regard to the ultimate truth. The error with regard to the mundane truth is to take the conditioned as unconditioned, to cling to the fragmentary as complete. This error results in dogmatic views and the false sense of self. Shunyata, as a remedy for this error with respect to the mundane, teaches the relativity of all things, the dependent arising of determinate entities. As mundane truth, Shunyata means that all things are empty of inherent existence. Opponents in very many ways interpret this whole emptiness view to be a metaphysical view itself. They say that emptiness can be understood in relation to there being ultimately real things. Emptiness is an attribute, and attribute is always of something. It is possessed by something. So, Shunyata or emptiness cannot be accepted. To this, Nagarjuna gives the reply that this is a mistaken view. Let us understand what Nagarjuna's reply amounts to. If one were to take this understanding of the emptiness of things as itself absolute, this again would be clinging to Shunyata. This mistake is the error not with regard to the mundane nature of things, but with regard to their ultimate nature. It is to take the conditionedness of conditioned as itself unconditioned. So, one must be conscious of the fact that even Shunyata is Shunya of absoluteness. It does not have a substantial reality of its own. It is just a method, and which is why Buddha had said, I call him incurable who clings to Shunyata itself as a theory. If a drug administered to a patient were to remove all his disorders, but were to foul the stomach itself by remaining in it, would you call the patient cured? Even so, Shunyata is an antidote to all dogmatic views. But if a man were to cling to it forever as a view in itself, he is doomed. So, according to Shunyavad, behind this phenomenal world lies a reality which is indescribable and devoid of any intrinsic nature. This indescribable and naturelessness comes from the dependent character of things. And this is the truth about Pratitya Samutpad or interdependent causation. But before understanding the Madhyamika take on the concept of causation, let us understand the Prasangika methodology. And here I will mention Chandrakirti's work, Prasannapada, because he draws special attention to the Prasangika method of Nagarjuna's logic, which shows no inclination towards formulating Swatantranumana or independent argumentation. Now, what is this method? It is a method to refute any essentialist or metaphysical doctrine which is also designated as four-cornered negation or Chatushkoti. Now, four-cornered negation or Chatushkoti is a logical tool to show the logical contradictions present in the metaphysical doctrines. There are four possible alternatives or Chatushkoti involved in any situation. And the Madhyamika philosophers reject through argument all the four alternatives by showing their seemingly contradictory or problematic nature. They would invalidate the arguments of the opponents on charges of either infinite regress or circularity or of thoughtlessness. Let us take an example. There are only four possible alternatives regarding reality. Let us take one verse from the Madhyamika Karika which says, Sarvam tathyam na va tathyam tathyam cha tathyam eva cha naiva tathyam etad buddhanushasanam, which means either everything is real or everything is unreal, or both real and unreal, or neither real nor unreal. And the Madhyamikas reject all four alternatives, for Buddha did not approve any of these, as he used to remain silent on all the four possibilities regarding reality. He did employ the four-cornered negation to deal with the things at a practical level. But Nagarjuna re-established and reshaped this method by giving it a logical structure which ultimately makes it a distinguishing quality of the Madhyamika school. But it is believed that while the Buddha had provided the four-error method to discourage the advocacy of traditional metaphysical and religious positions, Mogaliputta Tissa constructed a discussion format which examined various doctrinal disputes in early Buddhism, which in his finding represented positions which were equally logically invalid and therefore should not be asserted. Perhaps inspired by this logically sharpened skeptical approach, Nagarjuna refined the four errors method from the strictly illocutionary and pragmatic tool it had been in early Buddhism into a logic machine that dissolved Buddhist metaphysical positions which had been growing in influence. Now you have got some sense of what Chatushkoti is. Let us discuss how Pratitya Samutpad or interdependent origination is established through the rejection of the concept of causality. Now, there are four theories about causation. The first theory is cause and effect are identical. One can say it is self-causation. This is the view held by the Sarvastivadins, and it is also called Satkaryavad. The second theory says cause and effect are different, which means there is external causation. And this view is held by the Sautrantikas, and it is also called Asat Karyavad. The third theory says cause and effect are both identical and different. So this view claims both self-causation as well as external causation, and this view is held by the Jaina philosophers. The fourth theory says cause and effect are neither identical nor different. What this means is that there is neither self-causation nor external causation, which implies things happen by chance, and this view is held by the materialists. Now, Nagarjuna smashed all the four theories by his dialectic method. The first theory says there is identity between cause and effect. If this is so, then how does one know which one of the two is to function as the cause and which one as the effect? The second theory says cause and effect are different. Now, if that is so, the two entities are like strangers, having no connection with one another. So how can the relationship of cause and effect hold? The third theory says cause and effect are both identical and different from each other. Now, the objections raised in the first two theories apply in conjunction to the third theory. So, this one is also rejected. The fourth and the last theory says that everything happens by chance, as there is neither self-causation nor external causation. Now, this theory is an example where one either makes a dogmatic assertion or just makes a nonsensical remark. So, this too holds no good. Now, after rejecting the theory of causation, Nagarjuna claims that Pratitya Samutpad is the only truth. It does not imply a temporal sequence of entities between which there is a causal relation. It points to a dependence of one concept on another. This interdependence of concept is, according to Nagarjuna, the same as the Shunyata or Nisvabhavata. That is a senselessness of all these concepts. If every concept is dependent on another for its intelligibility, it cannot be said to have a fixed essence of its own. Now, Nagarjuna describes Pratitya Samutpad in the very beginning of Mool Madhyamaka Karika as Anirodham, Anutpadam, Anuchedam, Ashashvatam, Anekartham, Ananartham, Anagamam, Anirgamam. And one who realizes Shunyata or Nisvabhavata achieves Nirvana. Nirvana does not mean complete destruction, nor does it point to a world higher than this. It is to be achieved here and now in one's lifetime by abandoning all essentialist thought constructions. Any attempt to describe Nirvana as something other than this is a futile attempt. It is indescribable in terms of the categories of thought which only ascribe words like is and is not, which corrupt the profoundness of it. Buddha therefore remains silent on questions pertaining to Nirvana. Nirvana is neither existence nor non-existence, for both existence and non-existence are conditioned. It cannot be both existence and non-existence for the same reason. And to say that Nirvana is neither existence nor non-existence is inconceivable. So what is it? It is Sarva Kalpanakshaya, that is, cessation of all essentialist thought constructions. The best description on Nirvana is given in the dialogue between King Milinda and the Buddhist monk Nagasena, and which comes by way of an analogy. This description surpasses all boundaries drawn between the Hinayana and the Mahayana traditions, and it goes like this. King Milinda asks, "Is it possible, Nagasena, to point out the size, shape or duration of Nibbana by a simile?" Nagasena says, "No, it is not possible. There is no other thing like it. Then King Milinda asks, is there then any attribute of Nibbana found in other things that can be demonstrated by a simile? Nagasena says, yes, that can be done, as a lotus is unwetted by water. Nibbana is unsullied by the defilements. Like water, it cools the fever of defilements and quenches the thirst of craving. As the ocean is empty of corpses, Nibbana is empty of all defilements. As the ocean is not increased by all the beings who attain it, it is the abode of great beings. And it is decorated with the waves of knowledge and freedom. Like food which sustains life, Nibbana drives away old age and death. It increases the spiritual strength of beings. It gives the beauty of virtue. It removes the distress of the defilements. It drives out the exhaustion of all sufferings. Like space, it is not born, does not decay or perish. It does not pass away here and arise elsewhere. It is invincible. Thieves cannot steal it. It is not attached to anything. It is the sphere of Aryans, who are like birds in space. It is unobstructed and it is infinite. Like a wish-fulfilling gem, it fulfills all desires, causes delight, and is lustrous like red sandalwood. It is hard to get. Its fragrance is incomparable and it is praised by good men. As ghee is recognizable by its special attributes, so Nibbana has special attributes. As ghee has a sweet fragrance, Nibbana has the sweet fragrance of virtue. As ghee has a delicious taste, Nibbana has the delicious taste of freedom. Like a mountain peak, it is very high, immovable, inaccessible to the defilements. It has no place where defilements can grow, and it is without favoritism or prejudice. Nagarjuna states that there are two kinds of truth, conventional or Samvriti Satya and transcendental or Paramarthik Satya. The world of ignorance refers to Samvriti Satya. Here ignorance creates a false picture in our minds and we attribute Svabhava to everything. But the realization of Shunyata is the attainment of Paramarthik Satya. Samvriti Satya is the means to attain the Paramarthik Satya. The realization of Shunyata comes not through reason but through intuition. With this, I will end my lecture. Thank you so much.